Which is the largest ocean on Earth? How many oceans are officially recognized today? Which ocean surrounds Antarctica? Which ocean lies north of Europe and Asia? Which ocean separates the Americas from Europe, Africa? Which ocean lies between Africa, Asia, and Australia? Which sea covers over 5.6 million square kilometers near the Philippines? Which sea is the second largest, located near Australia? Which sea is known as the American Mediterranean Sea? Which sea lies between India and the Arabian Peninsula? Which sea is defined by ocean currents rather than land boundaries? Which sea lies east of China? Which sea lies east of China and west of Japan? Which sea has no coastline and is defined by currents? Which sea lies between North America and Asia? Which gulf lies near Mexico and the USA? Which sea borders India, Bangladesh, and Myanmar? Which Australian associated sea is between Australia and New Zealand? Which sea is known for its rich biodiversity and coral reefs near Australia? Which inland sea is actually the world's largest lake? Which sea is located between Europe, Asia, and Africa? Which sea lies between Europe and Asia, north of the Mediterranean? Which European sea separates Italy from the Balkans? Which sea lies between Greece and Turkey? Which sea lies between Greece and Italy? Which sea is famous for its high salinity and floating ability? Which major sea lies between Africa and the Arabian Peninsula? Which sea lies between Sweden and Finland? Which sea lies north of Germany and Denmark? Which sea lies west of Norway and north of the Atlantic? Which sea lies north of Russia and feeds into the Arctic Ocean? Which sea lies off Antarctica near Weddell? Which sea lies north of Canada? Which gulf lies on Africa's west coast near Nigeria? Which sea borders California and Alaska? Which sea lies east of Russia and near Alaska? Which gulf lies between Saudi Arabia and Iran? Which sea lies to the east of Japan? Which marginal sea surrounds Russia's eastern coast? Which sea lies north of Russia's Siberia? Which sea lies between Siberia and Alaska? Which sea lies north of Canada's Arctic regions? Which sea lies between Greenland and Norway? Which body of water is called a sea, but is actually a bay? Which sea lies west of South America? Which sea lies north of Antarctica near the South Sandwich Islands? Which sea lies east of Thailand and west of the Philippines? Which sea lies south of Myanmar and west of Thailand? Which sea lies north of Sumatra and Java? Which sea is southeast of the Philippines? Which sea lies between Sulawesi and Borneo? Which sea lies north of Australia near Papua New Guinea? Which sea lies east of Indonesia and south of Philippines? Which sea lies between Timor and Australia? Which small sea lies between Flores and Sulawesi? Which sea lies between Moluccas and Sulawesi? Which sea lies between Seram and Buru Islands? Which sea lies near Savu Island? Which gulf lies near the northern Caribbean? Which sea lies north of Africa and adjacent to Europe? Which sea lies between Europe and North Africa? Which sea lies east of Greece? Which sea lies between Italy and Greece? Which sea separates Italy from the Balkans? Which sea borders Greece, Turkey, and Bulgaria? Which sea lies at the southeastern edge of Europe? Which inland sea lies near Yemen and Sudan? Which sea lies between India and Sri Lanka? Which sea lies west of Thailand and east of India? Which sea borders East Asia and includes the Yellow Sea? Which sea lies between China and Japan? Which sea lies off the east coast of Korea? Which inland saline body is often called a sea? Which sea sits in a rift below sea level? Which sea lies northwest of Australia? Which sea is known for its coral reefs and storms? Which sea is enclosed by the US, Mexico, and Cuba? Which sea lies east of the Philippines? Which sea lies south of Cuba and east of Central America? Which sea is similar to a marine heaven with seaweed? Which sea lies north of Canada? Which sea lies between Alaska and Russia? Which sea borders northeastern Canada? Which sea lies near the North Pole with uncertain classification? Which sea lies near northern Greenland? Which sea lies between Greenland and Svalbard? Which sea includes part of the North Atlantic Gyre? Which sea encircles Antarctica? Which body of water covers most of the planet's surface? Which sea is famous for being called the Sea of Islands? How many of the world's oceans are widely recognized? Which ocean is the warmest and geologically youngest? Which ocean holds the deepest point on Earth? Which sea borders over 20 countries? Which sea is bounded by China, Taiwan, and the Philippines? Which sea lies north of Japan and south of Russia? Which marginal sea lies along the Arctic coast of Russia? Which sea lies north of Siberia and east of Norway? Which sea is known for being a key historic trade route? Which sea is bordered by India, Myanmar, Thailand, and Malaysia? Which ocean is clockwise from the Atlantic, Pacific, Indian, Southern, and Arctic? Which sea lies between Africa and the Arabian Peninsula? Which sea is between Greece and Turkey? Which sea lies west of Italy and east of Spain? Which sea lies east of Italy and west of Greece? Which sea lies south of Ireland and west of England? Which sea lies off southeastern China? Which sea lies between Japan and the Korean Peninsula? Which sea lies between Saudi Arabia and Africa? Which inland sea is actually a salt lake? Which sea lies between Greenland and Norway? Which sea lies north of Russia's Siberia? Which sea lies between Eastern Europe and southwest Russia? Which inland sea has extremely high salinity and no outlet? Which sea lies north of Australia and west of New Guinea? Which sea is known for its coral reefs and lies northeast of Australia? Which sea lies between Borneo and Sulawesi? Which sea lies south of Thailand and west of the Philippines? Which sea lies between Sumatra and Borneo? Which sea lies between Timor and Australia? Which sea lies between Sulawesi and Papua New Guinea? Which gulf lies near Nigeria on Africa's west coast? Which bay lies between Canada's Ontario and Quebec provinces? Which body of water is called a sea, but is actually a gulf? Which sea is located off the eastern coast of Greenland? Which sea lies north of Canada's Arctic coast? Which strait connects the Caribbean Sea to the Atlantic Ocean? Which sea lies south of Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula? Which sea lies north of Japan? Which body of water lies between Taiwan and continental Asia? Which sea is east of the Philippines? Which sea lies east of Greenland and north of Iceland? Which sea lies south of Alaska? Which sea lies between the U.S. mainland and Alaska? Which sea lies east of the Caspian Sea? Which major sea is located between Africa and Europe? Which sea lies north of Germany and south of Norway? Which sea is located between Sweden and Finland? Which inland body of water shares its name with a sea but is actually a bay in Canada? Which sea lies between Denmark and the UK? Which sea lies between the UK and Norway? Which sea lies west of Ireland? Which sea is located at the northern edge of the North Sea near Ireland? Which marginal sea surrounds Japan and Sakhalin Island? Which sea lies to the northeast of Japan? Which sea lies between Italy and western Turkey? Which strait separates Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula from Alaska? Which sea lies west of Central America and Mexico? Which sea lies south of Mississippi and Louisiana in the USA? Which sea lies near the Bahamas and Cuba? Which ocean is the warmest and youngest geologically? Which ocean contains the world's deepest point, the Mariana Trench? Which ocean completely encircles Antarctica? Which ocean lies mostly in the northern hemisphere and borders Europe and North America? Which ocean covers the area around the North Pole? Which ocean lies between Africa, Asia, and Australia? Which ocean is the largest by surface area? Which ocean has the largest volume? Which ocean borders Australia to its south and Antarctica to its north? Which ocean is shrinking due to tectonic activity? Which sea is at the northern edge of the Gulf of Mexico? Which sea lies west of the Philippines and east of Vietnam? Which gulf lies between Iran and the Arabian Peninsula? Which gulf is situated at the southern border of Russia and the western border of India? Which sea borders 20-plus countries including Greece, Turkey, and North Africa? Which sea lies near the Maldives? Which corridor of water separates Australia's mainland from Tasmania? What large sea lies between Alaska and Siberia? Which sea separates Russia from the Baltic countries? Which sea is east of Sweden and west of Finland? Which sea is characterized by floating seaweed mats in the North Atlantic? Which sea lies off the east coast of Siberia and west of Alaska? Which sea is located in the Southern Ocean adjacent to the Antarctic Peninsula? Which sea lies east of the Weddell Sea? Which sea is south of the Pacific near Antarctica? Which sea is located near Tierra del Fuego and named after a Scot? Which sea lies northeast of Russia's Kamchatka and west of Alaska? Which sea is east of Madagascar and west of Indonesia? Which sea is located in the Atlantic off the coast of Brazil? Which sea lies off Argentina's eastern coastline? Which sea lies between the UK, France, and Belgium? Which sea lies between the Greenland and Barents Seas? Which sea borders Africa's Mediterranean coast? Which sea surrounds the Persian Gulf? Which sea lies north of Africa and eastern border of Spain's peninsula? Which sea lies off East Africa and west of the Indian Ocean? Which inland body of water named a sea is drying up due to environmental damage? Which sea is enclosed by the Malay archipelago and considered marginal? Which sea lies between the Malay Peninsula and Borneo? Which sea lies between the Philippines and Taiwan? Which sea lies north of New Zealand near Tasmania? Which sea is located between Timor and Southeast Asia? Which sea lies between Sulawesi and the Philippines? Which sea is known as the Sea of Islands in the Pacific? Which sea lies between Borneo and Philippines? Which sea surrounds Kamchatka Peninsula? Which sea lies southeast of Iceland and east of Greenland? Which body of water connects the Gulf of Mexico to the Atlantic? Which sea borders the Philippines to the west? Which sea lies east of Thailand and west of the Philippines?